Enjoy your Halloween festivities, mortals. Are you doom-scrolling through your hangover, full of sweets and bad decisions? Good. Let's keep that energy going. Here's one from the crime vampire's vault, just to make sure you don't sleep for another night. This is the story of Miss Selene, the quiet beekeeper who lived alone at the edge of Wicker's end. She was polite, precise, and peculiar. Every village has one. The quiet woman on the hill. Doesn't wave, doesn't chat. Keeps her head down, keeps her garden wilder than the rest. And the children, they kept away, and for good reason. But Miss Selene was a mystery. Always distant, always a faint nod to the shopkeeper, and always the exact change. Her only passion seemed to be her bees. She tended to them with such aching devotion, and with no suit needed, she would sing them lullabies in a language no one recognized. The bees appeared to love her in return, reacting to her in such a way that townsfolk whispered it was black magic. The truth was, nobody knew where Miss Selene had come from, nor could they place the strange language she sometimes spoke. In the early days after her sudden arrival, when curiosity was still greater than fear, locals who wandered too near told tales of strange incense curling on the air, of obscure chanting carried on the wind, even of eerie voodoo dancing glimpsed through her garden hedges. Yet no one could say for certain what was fact and what was fiction. For Miss Selene kept no company. Her only devotion was to her bees. Miss Selene heard the whispers, yet kept herself to herself. As long as you left her bees alone, you saw no wrath from Miss Selene. But it was the children who suffered it first. One autumn afternoon, some new children to the village, bored and daring each other, they crept into her garden. Among the wildflowers and the humming hives, their courage soured into cruelty. They picked up stones and began pelting the hives. The bees frenzied some, but it was Selene who transformed. She burst from her doorway, eyes wild, mouth open, screaming a torrent of words in that strange, guttural tongue none could place. Her voice cut the air like a banshee's wail. The children scattered back through the hedgerows, legs trembling, hearts pounding. From that day on, no child strayed near her garden, and every parent in Wicker's End clutched their little ones tighter whenever Miss Selene passed. Her name spread further now. She was no longer Miss Selene, but the witch on the hill, the banshee, the woman who spoke to bees in the devil's tongue. The villagers muttered it by the pump, whispered it in the grocer's, and mothers used it to hush crying babes. But Selene did not care. Her bees still adored her, and she them. Until the day a shadow crossed her hives. A hornet, larger than any she had seen, its body striped like a warning, swooped upon her bees. Selene had fought an endless battle with these bastard beasts, as she'd call them. She swiped the thing, crushed it, and thought it done, but the air did not fall silent. That night a low droning lingered in the trees, steady and unnatural. It followed her to bed. It hummed again when she woke. Her bees grew restless. Where once they circled her hands in gentle clouds, now they twitched and shuddered at her presence, as though her touch had soured. At night she woke in sweat, her palm still burning as if the hornet stung her from within. Her tongue tingled, her bones ached, her very blood seemed to hum when the moon climbed high. On Halloween night the moon bled red over Wicker's End. Trick-or-treaters ran laughing through the village lanes, while at the edge of town Selene writhed in the grass. The droning swelled into a storm, and then it came. The swarm. Hornets in their thousands, blotting out the sky, descended upon her. Their stingers pierced her skin again and again, swelling her body grotesquely, bubbling with lumps that shifted beneath her flesh. She gasped for air, and the queen hornet answered. Crawling into her mouth, stinging her tongue, the venom poured into her veins. It was no ordinary venom, deranged almost, as though it belonged to something older than nature itself. Her body convulsed, fizzing as though boiled from the inside. Bones crackled, limbs twisted. Each sting dragged her toward death, and each sting pulled her back again, a cruel parody of resurrection. The children who passed by shrieked with delight, thinking her swollen, bubbling form nothing more than a Halloween prop. They clapped, they laughed, and ran on into the night. But by dawn, she was no longer Selene. From the garden rose something new, half woman, half hornet. Her limbs jointed, her jaw sharp, her eyes glowing amber. Her wings hissed like drawn blades, the Horness, Queen Selene reborn. But no rebirth comes without sacrifice. Selene screamed out a guttural, cacophonous hum into the night. With her body now warped into the chimera she was fated to become, the first hunger struck like fire in her veins. Her bees, those gentle companions who had trusted her song, didn't stand a chance. One by one, hive by hive, she consumed them, fangs and pincers tearing through the very creatures she had once tended with love. Their soft bodies broke between her mandibles, their honeyed wings dissolved upon her tongue. By dawn, the hives were silent. No hum, no dance, no bloom of life. Only the Horness remained, her belly slick with venom and ruin, the queen who had devoured her own kingdom. In the months that followed, a morose mood fell on the people of Wicker's End. Men, women, and children were going missing without explanation, and all eyes cast their judgment towards the hill. Village whispers become superstitions. For every Halloween thereafter, she descended from the hill. Her swarm clouded the skies, her shadow fell across the cottages, and it was always the children who suffered first. As the years passed, Wicker's End withered. Without bees, flowers wilted, orchards bore no fruit, and fields turned to husks. The village became known by another name, the village without bees. Yet the curse did not stay contained. Wherever the Horness's swarm flew, blossoms curled, meadows died, and the hum of bees fell silent. The villagers finally rose in fury. Torches in hand, they stormed her hill, doused her cottage in oil, and burned it to the ground. The flames licked the sky, the hives cracked and hissed, the smoke stank of scorched honey. They burned the cottage, they burned the hives, they burned the nest, but when the embers cooled, Selene was gone. Some swore they saw her silhouette vanish against the moon, wings carrying her into the night. Others were convinced she turned to ash in the fire, but nobody knew the truth, because the tale lingers still, and children continue to disappear. Every Halloween, the children of Wicker's End whisper her name, listening for that endless drone in the trees. Bored teens would dare each other to summon her for drunken kicks, having been raised on the tales of how Miss Selene became the Horness, stealer of children and killer of pollinators. Some adults in desperation started keeping bees themselves, and every Halloween the people of Wicker's End would turn to ritual. Instead of the traditional pumpkins on their porch, they would leave out an offering of bees fresh from their hives in the hope of taming the Horness and deterring the vanishings. But every year the same. Every last bee would be gone, and so would another child. Eventually, the townfolk realized that the young disappearing were always the bloodlines of those who stood present at the burning of Miss Selene's cottage. Forced them to live through the unequivocal pain of losing a child. Left them with years of agonizing questions, always left unanswered, the grief so agonizing in some cases they would beg for death. Then, one by one, the Horness would happily oblige. Now only a handful remain, and still the offerings are made, not in hope of mercy, but in the quiet dread that the Horness will never be appeased. Maybe they can save one bloodline, one generation. When will it ever stop? Nobody knows, but the superstitions of Wicker's End, to this day, tell you to keep your kiddywinks close, and to never, ever kill a hornet. This story comes from so deep inside the vault, it was never meant to see the light of day. Cases so foul they gather rot, not dust. You'll find no poetry here, mortals, only the truth, scraped raw. It was 1980s London, a brutalist concrete maze they called Rosewood Vale, tucked behind train yards and tower blocks, where the pond life swam and secrets festered. They have long since changed the name, and if you ask the locals today, they'll pretend that they never knew the twins. They were born entangled, one umbilical cord wrapped tightly around both their necks, identical, neonatal abstinence twins, already trembling from what ran through their mother's veins. Fiery red hair, and by the time they were eventually taken from her arms, tempers to match. For 5 years, somehow they slipped through the net. Eventually they were found filthy and malnourished, unimaginably neglected, and unable to speak to anyone but each other. Crack pipes in the kitchen sink, needle caps in the cot. Strangers passed through their home like seasons, and only the uncountable scars the girls wore from head to toe spoke fragments of their story. Mummy Dearest and her friends had been using the twins as an ashtray, among other things. Yet, to this day, nobody can justify what the twins turned into.
They'd been placed with a foster family and it seemed to be going okay. Then one morning the mum found the pet rabbit, strung up by its own guts. The twins just laughing like butter wouldn't melt.
They weren't even 6 years old yet.
The girls were removed from placement, both presented with flat affect and refused to speak to adults. And again only to each other, mostly in whispers and unfinished sentences. Any attempt to separate the girls caused such visceral and violent reactions, the psychiatric team advised they both be committed to the Maybridge Centre for juvenile psychiatric observation.
That's when Dr. Warren Callister entered the story.
Patient File 404. Jennifer and Jessica, surname redacted. Aged 6. Referred for dissociative identity markers. Now, what I've found is that they mimic one another perfectly, almost as if they have zero autonomy or independence from one another. They've turned mirroring into survival. A psychological symbiosis. I believe trauma has forced them to merge identities, but not into one. Into two halves of a single psyche. Each twin representing a hemisphere of that single brain, if you like. They are able to move as one.
That evaluation became his obsession. In all of his years studying twins, Warren Callister believed he'd found something rare.
They do not sleep properly. They dream together. When I wake one, the other jolts. They refuse to be studied separately. I have never seen bonding as dramatic as this. They do not speak to me, but they smile, and I know I'm also being studied.
The twins remained deeply fractured for years, ignoring all adults and answering only to their counterpart. They whispered in corners, braided each other's hair, and always, always wore their bows. Dr. Callister made it his life's work to unravel the riddle of the red-haired twins, what trauma rendered them mute, how they shared not just glances, but seemingly a single flickering consciousness. While most fractured inward into alters, these two appeared to fuse outward into one. He concluded the girls displayed symptoms of PTSD and mild psychosis. conditions that could either subdue or intensify depending on external stressors. His central hypothesis: so long as the twins remained together, they posed no threat, but separation, he warned, would risk catastrophic psychological rupture and possibly violent outbursts. They were 13 when the new nurse arrived. Bright red hair, soft voice, the first staff member who was not sufficiently creeped out by the twins to keep a distance, but she got too close, and close to the twins meant a threat. Seemingly protecting her sister from the woman that resembled their mother, Jennifer lashed out. The injury wasn't fatal, but the consequence was. They need boundaries, the board said. Separate them before it escalates. Dr. Callister begged them not to. He'd warned them, but they refused to listen and lit a spark that took another 3 years to blow. The moment the twins were pulled apart, they screamed, a sound so piercing it cracked glass in the adjacent room. But the moment they lost sight of one another, silence, eerie silence, then something even stranger. Their eyes rolled back in tandem, then side to side, not blind, not lost, but reading, not the room, each other, through walls, still tuned in, still connected, still one. For 3 years they were kept apart, no progress made, no words spoken, no further tantrums, just eerie stillness. A perfectly mirrored shutdown, but Dr. Warren Callister knew the truth. They hadn't gone silent at all, they'd gone internal. He visited both sites regularly. Jennifer remained at his facility, and Jessica, a long, cold corridor away with many doors in between. Neither of the twins would watch him through their eerie smiles again, not until age 16, and not until that night. When both the twins' beds were found empty, no alarm tripped, yet perfectly coordinated. And then the red-haired women began to turn up, hollowed. Halloween night, 1996. 4 red-haired women vanished, all strangers, all found the same way, drawn somewhere quiet, as if by a voice they trusted. Each discovery left investigators pale and tight-lipped. The only detail that reached the press was the token, a bow, tied with something no one would describe on record. One officer whispered that it wasn't fabric at all. Something too organic to be ribbon. Something that also once dangled a bunny from a washing line.
I'm sure it's intestines, sir.
And then, the final body. They found her slumped in the bathtub of her derelict flat on Hastow Lane, the mother, red-haired. Small for her years, just like her daughters. Her last known words, according to a neighbor, were, "The cord should have finished you off." Beatrice Pelham Bruce, once a darling of the debutante circuit, born to money, married into scandal, and then turned to the streets, now lay slain, bearing the unmistakable MO of the twins she once birthed, and then later brutalized.
Beatrice, or B as they called her on the streets, was once the darling of a very wealthy family, but her downfall began quietly, a little indulgence here and there. What started as casual use spiraled into dependency, and eventually into much harder territory. Her parents, well-connected, old money, tried everything. Private clinics, luxury rehabs, clean breaks. Nothing worked. Eventually, they cut ties, financially and emotionally. Left to fend for herself, Beatrice reached out to old acquaintances, looking for support in any form she could get. One of them was a judge, someone with power, influence, and a dark curiosity. And that's when everything changed.
Less than 12 hours later, the twins returned, barefoot, smiling, scratched up like bramble sprites. They walked right through the hospital's front doors and calmly asked for Dr. Callister. Their first words in years. In the small windowless interview room, Jennifer and Jessica sat side by side, the same hair bows, but the blank stares had gone. They were animated and open, like a weight had been lifted from their souls. They lit the fires before they even walked in, and on October 31st, 1996, the 100-year-old psychiatric hospital, the Maybridge Center, burnt to the ground, with everyone in it.
I'm not sure I'm going to get out. We heard the alarm, but the girls didn't move, so neither did I. Their shared psyche is a marvel of the mind, one I've been privileged to study, and perhaps become consumed by. The ceiling fell in. The girls disappeared into the smoke, but now the entrance is blocked, and I fear the smoke will kill me before help arrives. Should I not make it out? The code to my safe, where my notes on the twins are kept, is 6.
When the smoke cleared, they found him, Dr. Warren Callister, crushed beneath a beam, clutching the charred file of the twins. Through the embers, you could see his lips held the faintest curl, not of agony, but of grim satisfaction. He had finally solved the riddle of the twins, and he took it to his grave. For 2 days, rescue crews worked day and night to remove all the bodies from the wreckage. 189 souls perished, and the only bodies unaccounted for were Jennifer and Jessica. The cover-up was swift. The official cause, an electrical fault in a neglected wing, no criminal inquiry, no obituary for the girls, and the community just repeated rumors. The twins perished, some said. Others think the girls ran for freedom. Mostly people think the grandparents scooped the girls up and swallowed up the scandal with their money and connections. But the biggest whisper of all, who was the judge? That question was answered 4 years later. In the hills above Devonshire, a body was discovered. An esteemed judge, knighted, decorated, beloved, was found seated at his dining table, his stomach slit open, with his insides pulled outward and fashioned into a crimson dinner tie. The news spread like wildfire through the concrete lanes, and to this very day, anyone who ever hurt the twins still sleeps with one eye open. How do I know these tales, mortals? And how did the crime vampire acquire Dr. Callister's safe? I could tell you, mortals, and Queen Selene, that ancient venom in the hornet's blood. I could ease my conscience, perhaps return to nightly stasis, free myself of the ghosts in my head, and tell you everything, mortals. But I'm all right. If you want more true crime, drawn from both mortal records and the crime vampire's vault, like and subscribe.